Welcome back, everyone. Pal Ponder on Weather here with another update. We've got several disturbances over the next several days that'll bring a series of mesoscale convective complexes with large hail, damaging winds, and a lot of heavy rainfall. And that active pattern looks to continue well into next week. So if we take a look at the overall vorticity complexes that are coming across, let's put the track on this and show you what we're talking about. Here's this persistent southwest flow. This is active, much more subtropical jet streams coming in off the equatorial Pacific. At the same time, this whole area down here into the central US is heating up in a big way. Those temperatures really soared yesterday and they're really elevated today, and that's going to bring some lift. And into the daytime afternoon, the heating aspect of these storms, once we have a lot more energy built up in the atmosphere is going to be turning over with these mesoscale convective complexes. There's also another series on the northern branch as well, which actually keeps them active as well. So this whole area is going to be inundated with very heavy rainfall over the course of the next week. So let's take a look at the overall CAPE values, because right now the atmosphere is moistening up. The atmosphere is heating up in the daytime, heating of the most active part of the day. And these convective available potential energy is also increasing as well. So the atmosphere down here in portions of Texas, as well as into portions of Oklahoma, right now is getting unstable. And there's also another pocket of energy further north across portions of Iowa, as well as into Illinois. So as we move through the afternoon time frame, you can see about 5, 6, really heading into 6 o'clock there, we start to see some isolated supercells start to bubble up. And once that moves through, that'll take that CAPE values and really accelerate these storms. And we could be looking at some big time hail producer thunderstorms later on this afternoon, likely starting around 5, 6 o'clock. And this whole mesoscale convective complex will be diving from the northwest to the southeast, inundating, encompassing the North Texas region with very heavy rainfall, large hail, and damaging winds into the evening time frame. And it looks like an overnight event as well. So let's take a look at the setup and the latest from the Storm Prediction Center. They, in fact, at the noon advisory, they did in fact upgrade this and expanded this enhanced risk for large hail and damaging winds. It does encompass in portions of southern Oklahoma, as well as all of portions of western and north Texas, with very heavy rainfall as a mesoscale convective complex looks to form around 6 o'clock this afternoon into the early evening time frame, impacting the areas through the midnight time frame. There's also a northern side too. We've got another boundary up here across portions of Iowa, as well as into the Illinois region. That looks to be its own mesoscale convective complex that also looks to impact them later on this evening. So this impact will be a lot of high winds. We do have a hatched risk for those significant winds. We're talking upwards to maybe 65 plus miles an hour. I can't even rule out some of these with bow echoes could actually approach in the 80 mile per hour range. So now is the time to secure loose objects in this neck of the woods. I understand it's clear as a bell in a lot of these regions, so don't let your guard down. If you got plans tonight, just be on high alert. After about 6 o'clock, start looking out west, start looking towards the Wichita Falls area, start looking towards southern Oklahoma, out here in West Texas, as the atmosphere should start to erupt with supercell thunderstorms, and they will build throughout the evening and scoot across North Texas as we get through the evening time frame, the overnight, midnight, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And again, this northern side too has its own convective complex they're going to have to be concerned about as we head into really about the same time frame as the southern branch will be impacting as well. So let's take a look at this overall setup. So right now, again, it's clear as a bell. You can actually follow the time and date right here above my head. So we've got a little convective complex that's moving southbound across portions of New Orleans, getting into southern portions of Mississippi. But as we get into stop the clock here about 5 o'clock, you see actually a supercell thunderstorms blow it up right here along the Childress region, and that's the beginning stages of activity starting to turn over in that atmosphere. And so as we get into the 6 o'clock, you can see it elongating, back building around down into portions of West Texas. So it's the beginning of the stages of the cap breaking into that region, and towering supercell thunderstorms will be elongated right along this boundary here. So start to keep your eyes to the sky. Notice there's not much activity in this whole area down here in Iowa as well as Illinois as of yet. This is 8 o'clock tonight, guys. So as we get closer to the 9-10 o'clock time frame, you can actually see this building. We should see this whole complex is going to contain large, if not some very large hail within this region. We could be looking at some quarters, some golf ball, even at times you can't even roll out some ping pong, even tennis ball size, maybe at its highest peak as we move into the later end of the evening time frame. So, but you can see right at about the same time, this is 10 o'clock. It's starting to form right here into the Iowa region, and that will continue to propagate eastbound and expand. And as it does, this whole squall line will be a straight line wind event, very high winds, some isolated hail reports within this, and heavier rainfall as well. So now is the time to secure loose objects where you are under the gun with that slight and enhanced risk later on this evening. And yes, going into that 2 o'clock time frame, you can actually see this Boeing feature. So this is going to be an overnight event for northern Illinois. Could be looking at some very high winds, 60, 70 miles an hour in that region. And that will shift off probably out of North Texas by then, going into eastern parts of Texas, eastern Oklahoma by then, as we get deeper into the overnight hours. And as you wake up tomorrow by Sunday morning, that should be over portions of Indiana by then. But going into tomorrow, the atmosphere just kind of resets. It's going to be like a daily occurrence because this is May. We're going into a more of an active time frame. And even then, I think this is going to be upgraded. So we're going to have to be looking at for the dry line again out here in West Texas into Oklahoma City area. This whole boundary will be elongated to portions of Nebraska and to Iowa, going into northern Illinois again, as well as Indiana. And that's going into your Sunday time frame. So if we move the needle and go through the next 48 hours of the high resolution guidance, you can see how this whole picture kind of plays out. So we got a little bit of a trough that's going to be impacting portions of the Pacific Northwest, a little bit cooler air for them, but we got that northern side too. So even the northern side back into Montana, back in the Dakotas, could also be looking at some moderate to heavy rainfall at times with those series of systems coming in. But the main complexes, as far as the severe stuff, will be elongated into portions of Iowa, Illinois, and Indiana. That goes into your Sunday, and then I think it just kind of repeats. You can see that mesoscale complex goes into Sunday morning, fishtailing back into Kentucky, back into the western West Virginia region. And that will start to impact portions going into the evening time frame back into portions of western Kentucky as we go into Sunday. And then it just kind of rebuilds, right? It resets up further north. So we have a new complex into the overnight time frame coming out of Nebraska, impacting Iowa again, impacting the northern Illinois region. This is Sunday night into Monday morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, as we have another complex of a mesoscale convective system will be diving southeast with a lot of high winds associated with it as well, moving through Tennessee, moving through the northern branch of Alabama and the Georgia region, and that will be into the overnight hours. You can actually see this is pretty bona fide system up here, impacting much of Illinois into your overnight wee hours of the morning, Sunday night and into Monday time frame. But look at the helicity tracks and these updrafts of what we're talking about. Just over the next 48 hours, we've got these series of complexes down here in western and north Texas we've got to be concerned about with a lot of lift. It's not really a tornadic setup, but we could be looking at some larger hailstones. So definitely be on high alert. Park your cars in the garage if you have that capability to do so, or put one of those hail protector covers on, because you could see some larger hail that could do some damage to your car. So you don't want to wake up to any surprises. And again, further north as well, into Nebraska, into Iowa, into Illinois, back into Indiana, you need to be on high alert, as this is an active time frame definitely ahead. So let's move the needle and kind of take you through the rest of the week, because like I mentioned, it looks to be a kind of a fairly active pattern. We got a more of a southwest flow that's moving in. This whole atmosphere is really heating up in a big way. The dew points are crazy high, first time in the 70s so far this season, and those will only elevate and continue to lift further north as we get deeper into May. So yes, this whole area just continues to remain more active, especially across the southern plains, getting into the southeast, and that goes into your Tuesday time frame. And we're probably going to be looking at another system that's coming in from the west, and that's going to have a lot more lift associated with it and produce more heavy rainfall, especially as we go by midweek, going into the Texas region, going into the Oklahoma region, back into Louisiana and portions of Mississippi and Alabama. And it really looks to intensify as we get into your Thursday, Friday, definitely heading into your Saturday, going into next weekend. That trough looks to almost slow down. So if you got plans outside anywhere in the southern plains for next weekend, it could be a wet one, because this looks like to be a more widespread event. Now it's more of a isolated nature, more isolated to scatter supercell thunderstorms. This one looks to be more broadened and more widespread as we get into later on, late next week, especially heading into next weekend. And you can see this whole complex just kind of sits there and doesn't really go anywhere. This is next Sunday, folks. The whole area from New Mexico to Oklahoma, all of Texas could get inundated with just very heavy rainfall. So it looks like a pretty wet weekend for next weekend, as you're enjoying a nicer weekend, at least in the daytime, right now. But overall, for the next week or two, at least for the next week, it looks pretty wet. I mean, this is just the overall precipitation potentially for the next week. So with these series of disturbances that come in, so like I mentioned, you've got a northern branch here from the Pacific Northwest, and as these boundaries really come across, they could be leaving buckets of rainfall on a daily basis. And this could add up to be some significant totals, even on the northern branch here into portions of the Dakotas, into Minnesota, back into Wisconsin. And then we have that southern flank too, into New Mexico, all of Texas, Oklahoma, and really in portions of central, northern, and south Texas looks to get crushed, especially into next week. This is where a lot of the rainfall will be, but we could be looking at some big time flooding concerns down here, because it can be too much too fast as that complex looks to just slow down. The atmosphere's again heating up. You're well into the 90s today, and there's going to be plenty of fuel to fuel these thunderstorms and crank out these high water content values down here in this region. Again, flooding is going to be a kind of a more of a huge concern, especially as we head into late next week into next weekend down here for the southern plains. And then there's that northern branch too. So don't let your guard down here with these several mesoscale convective systems that'll be diving down, originating a little likely in Iowa and Illinois, and then diving southeast. So this whole area could get crushed with series of disturbances that come off the northwest flow here, that come down into Illinois, into Indiana, back into Ohio, getting into Kentucky. Should see some heavier precipitation, and back into portions of Tennessee, and then that will fishtail back into West Virginia and getting into the Carolinas as we get deeper into next weekend. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch me in the next update, why I protect you before and after storm.